Hello, everyone. This is Anand from Amoeboids, and today in C-Suite Conversations, we have with us Sukhbir Dhillon from Addteq. Welcome, Sukhbir, to Amoeboids C-Suite Conversations.
Thanks. Nice for having me here.
It's a great pleasure to have you here. One of the things that I've always known Addteq for is DevOps, right? So technologies, especially the software development related stuff, I really find it amazing. Now, obviously, in the flow of our conversation, I'm going to talk about DevOps a little more. But before we jump in there, can you talk through your journey? When did you start? When did you get into the Atlassian ecosystem? How large is your team size today, and so on?
Sure. Well, the DevOps journey kind of, I would say for me, started back in 97, even before the word DevOps came into picture.
Right.
I was a Linux fanatic back in India. I was in India at that time, and not many people were using Linux, but there used to be a magazine called PC World.
Right.
They used to provide a CD with it, so you can install Linux on that. So that's where I started. I got into scripting, and I had this vision that, apparently the world will evolve where pretty much every device will have a microchip in it. Pretty much every device will have some kind of operating system in it. And there will be a substantial need for you to automate software packaging and software deployment for those devices. And that's basically started my DevOps journey. Yesterday, I was joking with my wife that we have even our bulbs are running Linux operating system, and there are about hundreds of those bulbs in the house. And now, not even that, even microwaves and fridge and washing machines and all those also connect to internet.
Right.
So yeah, so that's where we are that today. But that's the vision, back then, and started in 97, and it's kind of evolved from there. We started Addteq, and when we started Addteq, DevOps word was not even existing yet.
Right.
So we kind of mostly called ourselves the configuration management experts.
Right.
But we always promoted the DevOps concepts without the name.
Right.
Everything should be CI, everything should be CD, everything should be, to make sure that from the development shop to the ops shop, how quickly can you and repetitively can you release software. One of our first project was with the city agency of New York.
Mm-hmm.
And when we started that project, they would do 2 or 3 deployments in a month, and they were manual deployments. And because of being manual deployments, people dropping using FTP window, the packages and so on and so forth to tons of servers, and they would make mistakes somewhere or the other, and things will fall apart. I would say more than 50% was a failure. Once we implemented our processes, procedures, scripting, automation, in 2 years, they started doing about 1,000 deployments in a month.
Wow.
The error rate.
This was in the year?
This was in the year 2008.
Wow.
And then they started. So they started doing about 1,000 deployments in a month with the error rate of 0.01%. So basically, if you're doing 1,000 deployments, there's possibility of 1 deployment going wrong.
Right.
From 3 to 4 deployments in a month, where half of them were guaranteed to be wrong.
Right.
So that's basically started our journey, and we became confident in what we can do. In 2012, I ran into Atlassian CEO at a Atlassian meetup in New York. I didn't even know at that point who he was. And we just started having conversation, and he suggested we should become partners. There are a few partners selling Atlassian products and using DevOps as a service. And basically in 2013, we basically became partners with Atlassian and started that.
Right. And I believe 2013 was even before the official Atlassian Marketplace started. Am I right?
Yes, Atlassian Marketplace started in 2014.
Right. Amazing, amazing. By any chance, do you recall? I'm just curious, do you recall what tools did you use, especially for the client, who deployed 1,000 builds in just 1 month? What were the set of tools that you were using at that point in time?
So client, this was 2007, 2008. So Rational was still the leader.
Right.
Customers were using ClearCase and ClearQuest like tools, but for my piece, it was mostly I needed a CI/CD tool, right? More than ClearCase or ClearQuest, and unfortunately, it's a government institution. Getting approvals and stuff takes forever.
Right.
So we ended up writing our own tool.
Wow, amazing.
To do the deployment. And initially, we didn't have a name for it. At that time, SourceForge was pretty popular.
Correct.
So we started calling our software MForge, short from Migration Forge. So it was all command line tool, you can say, for the most part. It would get deployed on different servers. And whoever is doing the deployment would basically have to type like MForge, where they are deploying it, what they're deploying, and that's pretty much it. It will take care of, not only will take care of a single server deployments, if you have multiple servers, it will figure out from the config files and deploy it the same way to multiple servers. Like in production, they had 64 server running. And it will spawn 64 different child processes which are deploying at the same time to each server. Yeah, and then we basically used that same IP with a couple of other similar government agencies, and that's how we basically started our DevOps journey.
Oh, amazing. So, I mean, if you talk about those names today, right? They're pretty much nowhere to be seen. The entire landscape of configuration management, DevOps, I mean, you can call it whatever you want, but the landscape has entirely changed, right? Can you talk about some of the trends that you have seen over a period of time, especially since you started and now today we are here, where DevOps is kind of a word where even those teams who are not, even those companies which are not core software development companies are trying to implement some part of DevOps into their software development team cultures. So what are some of those trends that you have seen?
So yeah, it's a continuously changing dynamics. So I would say in 2014, 2015 time, the DevOps was more CI.
Right.
DevOps was more at a project management level, connecting service desks to the R&D projects. So not many companies were looking into CD yet. I mean, they were, but it was still very primitive. And around 2015, 2016, when Docker started getting a strong foothold, and people started adopting Docker pretty rapidly. That's when CD started taking the center stage, right? So it started from CI, then became CD, and then CD kept going on for next couple of years, and then people started kind of understanding, I would say, that DevOps is CI CD combined together and making everybody's life easier, not just the tickets, just also the software. And post-pandemic, I would say, pre-pandemic, maybe a year or two before pre-pandemic, the DevOps started getting more things inserted in it. In between, there was also CI, CD, and automated tests, but the test part never became officially part of the whole. Nobody ever used a term called dev test ops or something like that. But the testing was still very much part of it. And then security became part of it pre-pandemic, and post-pandemic, it became a bigger deal because as we have seen, people were sitting home. The hacking incidents went up 400% after pandemic. So people started taking the sec part seriously. So DevSecOps took the center stage. That you build something, you test it for security, you find something, then you use the project management layer, and then you create a ticket and all that. And if everything's good, then you go to the ops part. And we have seen like a lot of banks started taking those seriously. And I was talking to one CIO and at a bank, and he told me that they have a security mandate for every project, and they had 900 different software applications, and every engineering manager has a mandate that this should go through security and so on and so forth, because it's apparently a government mandate. And especially banks and many other institutes which has a security government mandate, if there is an incident and the data is breached and they find out that it was because of the ignorance, then they put heavy fines on the banks and institutions like those. So they did an audit. How many of these 900 apps are actually following the security mandate? They were surprised to find there was only 10 apps actually sincerely following security mandates. The other 890 apps were not. So that basically, started the whole DevSecOps project with that customer, that they wanted to make sure that everything which gets built needs to go through that security automatically. And if it's not going to the security automatically, it needs to go through the upper team members to analyze and provide approval or exception. Otherwise, it'll keep screaming, and not that the upper management is expecting all of their 900 apps to be secure, but apparently they're not. The next evolution of DevOps, I would say, right now, security will be very strong initially. I would say just software companies, banks, and other companies with mandates. But apparently, it will spread across every vertical, be it not so obvious verticals, which are like banking and financials. Like there was a last year in March, there was a pipeline in America which was hacked and shut down. It was an oil pipeline, and it was shut down for like 3 weeks or something. And there was a shortage of oil everywhere. And think about the loss, like the millions and millions of gallons was going through that pipeline. It was shut down.
Absolutely.
So those industries, which do not look very obvious, that DevSecOps needs to be there now because software is everywhere. Right. It needs to be there.
Correct.
And the next transition, what we see or anticipate is, the dev accessibility ops, so dev alley ops. So basically same concept, but right after development, it should automatically do a check for accessibility. And if it's not accessible to visually impaired,
right,
it should basically similar to DevSecOps, go create a ticket in Jira and then gets completed. Today, 85% of the web is not accessible.
That's true.
Right, which means if a blind person wants to order food from a grocery store, he's not in luck many times. If a blind person wants to order pizza, many times he's not in luck. Apparently, 4 years ago, there was a lawsuit in US Supreme Court. A blind person was trying to order pizza from Domino's and was not able to order it.
Right.
Because it was not accessible. Medicine, another piece, right? They should be able to order medicine and anything which you and me can do.
Right, they should be able to do it.
They should be able to do. And the reason web is 85% not accessible today is not because developers are lazy. They are developers. If they knew, 2 extra pieces, they will insert that in. It's just that it's not raised earlier in the life cycle of the product development. Right. And when the product goes to for a change control for approvals, and then the people ask questions, okay, did you do accessibility tests? The answer for the most time is no. And then they're in a pickle that should they release the software, keep holding it, and it always gets pushed through and accessibility takes the backstage.
True.
So we see that, because of pandemic and now people working from home, more and more people in the IT workforce are working from home, which also involves visually impaired, visually disabled. They should be able to work as well, use these tools.
Right.
And the most popular tool is Jira. Most popular tool is Confluence. That's the whole gist behind we building Unstoppable and expand it. And our goal is to expand it horizontally. So we have it working for Jira, we have it for Confluence. We want to go forward with Bitbucket and other tools which people could be using to help make software development more accessible.
Absolutely. And I think I was anyway going to touch upon this point where I think Addteq is one of the very few partners who are actively working in the accessibility space as far as the Atlassian Marketplace apps are concerned. I think Unstoppable, like you mentioned, I've already seen that. I mean, obviously your target audience is completely different. I mean, at the end of the day, I wouldn't be too far off if I said the commercial viability is yet to be tested, right? But still you are investing in that domain. So I just find it pretty intriguing to see that kind of development happening in the Atlassian ecosystem. Do you want to shed some light on the triggers? Where is that accessibility trigger coming from as far as your apps and your investments are concerned?
Sure. So basically, Uh, accessibility is for some reason, people always think it's a very touchy subject,
Right.
and they're scared to talk about it. Few years ago, I was like that too. Till I learned that it's a touchy subject because we don't talk about it.
Right.
And basically, how we got to that is because we were talking to a very large bank, and they make everything accessible, right? And the US mandate is for banks, everything should be accessible, right? Currency notes are accessible,
Right.
ATM machines, right? So their banking website should be accessible, and the phone app should be accessible, and so on and so forth. And banks also take pride in doing that, and also release a lot of information on forums, and so on and so forth. And to make things accessible, banks would hire people who have these needs. They make them part of their QA team. And so they can test what the end user is going to do, and they can read requirements in Confluence. They can read requirements, and they can see tickets and stories in Jira and be part of the sprint. They should be able to read comments. They should be able to even look at the attachments. I'm going to come to that point. So one of the challenges, although Jira and Confluence claims to be accessible, it's not 100% there. So we don't say that we make Jira accessible. We say we enhance the accessibility, makes things easier for the user. And then we implement features like those. Be able to automatically detect user who has a special need and automatically enhance the accessibility for them. Then a customer came up with a requirement that we are attaching images to Jira. And is there a way you can make these images accessible? So we did a release last year where when you upload an image, and for us, it's an image, right? An image can contain text, or it can be just an image, right? Like, let's say somebody's standing in front of a sunset, right? Or image could contain, massive amount of text. Mostly ticket images attached in Jira contains a massive amount of text.
Right.
So we partner with Microsoft, and we use their AI. And when a visually disabled user wants to see the contents of the image, it could be as simple as a cat sitting somewhere, right? In that case, the AI reads it out. There is a cat, and more details like what kind of cat it is, what's the background, and so on and so forth. Or in a complicated situation where there could be, you took a screenshot of a table, right, and attached it. It reads the whole table to the person.
Wow.
And so that way, every single piece of the Jira becomes accessible. Right. They are able to contribute. They are able to read requirements, and everybody wins.
True. Amazing. Coming back to the DevOps thing, right? So I wanted to also pick your brains on the cloud adoption that's happening, right? Even Atlassian is sort of pushing further its agenda for migration to cloud. There are n number of incentives going on for the customers, for the solution partners, for marketplace partners, so on and so forth. But where do you think within this, especially within the context of DevOps, where do you think this cloud adoption is going for?
Well, the cloud adoption is a part of it. The biggest piece of the DevOps is not do things automatically. The biggest win of the DevOps is if you don't even have to do things.
Right.
And cloud is basically that, right? You don't have to worry about upgrade. You don't have to worry about patches. You don't have to worry about downtime. You don't have to worry about backup, right? So that goes out of the window. So that's where cloud fits in. That it's a must-have for DevOps. Pre-pandemic, people were thinking a little differently, especially Atlassian customers. They wanted to hold their data, sit on it, and all that. Hire armies of people to do upgrades, backup strategies, DR exercises, and so on and so forth. Post-pandemic, many companies started realizing that they're better off if somebody else is handling it. And that's where cloud fits in perfectly. And Atlassian, because we can see, is accelerating pretty rapidly in the cloud adoption. Before pre-pandemic, there used to be mostly smaller organization, less than 1,000 users and so on and so forth. Now I see like 5,000, 10,000.
Right. And they have recently brought even the 35,000 tier as well.
Yes. So, large companies are not only thinking, but making actions. Some of the banks, or some we can say very old, very large banks, may take a little bit longer, but many other organizations which fall between 5 to 10,000 users, or been in business for the last 30 something years, they are ripe for that journey.
Right.
Companies who are older than 30 something years, they will take a little longer because it's the mindset. Right. 30 years ago, there was no cloud. There was no internet.
It says going to take some time on their part. It's obvious.
Yep.
Right. Okay. Now moving on from the tech stuff to a little organization building stuff. Right. One of the things that I want to understand from you is how do you build a culture of customer centricity at Addteq? Any specific tips, any specific rituals that you follow, which ensure that, right from the top, everyone gets the message up to the individual contributor that customer-centric behavior is what the organization is incentivizing, is what is looking for?
So you'd say the road to perdition is never a smooth road. It's always up and down. So yeah, we had some misses here and there as well. I wouldn't say it was always a smooth sail.
Right.
But when we formed Addteq, we came up with 4 values. That we live for these 4 values. One of those 4 values is customer. Customer experience should be the best. If the customer is unhappy, eventually your life's gonna be unhappy.
True.
So based on that, we always, ask ourselves, okay, if I do this, how is this going to impact the customer? So that is always been part of the daily conversations, and especially items like, so we have Code Factory, which is like a managed hosting platform. It's an intermediate between Atlassian Cloud and self-hosted,
Right.
Meaning there are customers who can go to Atlassian Cloud and we move them to Atlassian Cloud. So, I call it self-hosted 1.0, Atlassian Cloud 3.0, and our Code Factory managed hosting as 2.0. There could be many reasons where for customer cannot go to cloud today, but wants our help to prepare them over the course of next 1 year or 2 years or so on and so forth, because they could be having some security mandates, some compliance like GXP, which a lot of medical industry needs to go through.
Right.
They may have custom plugins and there's no similar plugin in cloud for it. So those customers, they do a pit stop in Code Factory, maybe a year, maybe 2 years, and so on and so forth. And over there, our main objective is to make sure that customer instances are always up and running. Make sure their performance is always optimal. As soon as Atlassian started offering data center, we started offering data center in that on AWS provide auto scale. So if load goes up, it automatically scales more nodes.
Right.
But the main goal behind everything is the customer comes first. If the customer happiness we kind of calculate is if the customer is not opening a ticket at all, that means the customer is happy. If the customer needs to reach out to you, customer is not happy.
Right. So that's kind of a very transparent measure. There's probably not going to be an easier way than finding it out whether a customer is happy or not. Right. Just look at the number of tickets they have created, and if you have done a good job, probably they have not created any.
Yep. Exactly.
Amazing. All right. One leadership lesson that you would like to share with the wannabe entrepreneurs, wannabe CEOs, or people who are already leading a team, right? That one leadership lesson that you would want to share with them.
I would say there are so many. I'll give you kind of a product and the services because we are playing kind of both game. We plan on kind of evolving into just product, and you'll hear something big coming soon anytime. So on the product side, the biggest lesson I learned was your product should be PLG. Your product should be so simple that between downloading your product and customer to start using your product should not be more than 5 minutes. If the customer has to do a bunch of configuration, yes, that opens a opportunity for services, but it also turns off a bunch of your customers who don't want to reach out to you. And if you have a PLG, it automatically increases your adoption and conversion rate because nobody has to learn anything. Right? You download Facebook, you just type your name, this and that, and your app is ready to use.
Right.
But many of these DevOps apps you download an app, you have to do a PhD and then move forward. So that's the one lesson when I learned, I was like, this is why Excellent Table has a good adoption rate, because it's you downloading and starting to use it, it's literally less than 5 minutes.
Right.
On the services side, what I've seen is when people get a new customer, they're always make a mistake, especially new companies, uh, of going and getting and gathering new shiny logo, new shiny customer, and they're spending a lot of money in doing that, and somehow misses on the account management piece that the customers we already have, they need to be happy. If they are not happy, on one side we are bringing in customer, on the other side we are losing customers.
It's a leaky funnel.
Yes, so that balance is very important, because we all make those mistakes that if we spend too much on getting new and too little on sustaining current.
Right. True.
So those two lessons, because on the product side, that doesn't happen too frequently. Meaning, yes, your product is your product. Somebody downloaded your product. They will use your product for 3 years or more, or 5 years. Nobody's buying your product with the mindset that, okay, I'm going to use it today, but within a year I want to get done with it. Right. People have long-term intentions with the product. And since it's a piece of software, unless you do some major ball drops in R&D side, and people lose their data, obviously they're going to be pissed off and leave you.
Right.
It's easier to not mess it up. It's easier to do account management, and whereas services is, like, I consider one as movies, another as theater. Right? Movies, you made a movie, right? You put on hundreds of different movie halls.
Right.
People go watch the same stuff, whichever movie hall they're going to. Whereas the theater is that you have artists playing it live, and today one artist is sick.
You have to get,
and it's not able to give 100%. People would notice that.
Right.
So that's where the difference is. And in theater, they say you're always good as your last performance. You did 100 performance before and they were good. People, and then you did 101 and you messed it up. People will remember that 101 which you messed it up.
Right. Very interesting analogy indeed. Amazing. That was really an amazing conversation, Sukhbir. Thank you very much for sharing with us all of these insights, and we wish you all the best for Addteq, as well as you mentioned there is going to be a one announcement that's going to come across, so the entire audience is going to wait for it. Thank you once again.
Thanks for having me here.